The story begins in 1981, where we see San Francisco. Chris Gardner invests all of his life savings into buying portable bone density scanners. But luck doesn't favor him, as the machine completely flops in the market, and selling these scanners becomes very difficult for him. Because of this, his financial condition keeps getting worse. Chris lives in a rented house with his wife Linda and his son Christopher. Christopher's school fees, house rent, and many other expenses now fall on Linda, which starts creating problems in their relationship.
I know I have got to go to Oakland.
I gotta get Christopher home, feed him, bathe him, get him in bed, and be back here by 7.
Yes.
And we got the tax bill notice today.
All right.
What are you gonna do about that?
This is what we got to do.
However, it isn't really the fault of Chris or Linda. It's just the financial struggle that is too much to handle. Chris works very hard, and in order to manage his household, he needs to sell at least 4 scanners every month, but he can barely sell even one. One day, while Chris is making calls to his clients, a beautiful car stops in front of him and a man steps out. Chris can't stop himself and asks the man,
I got 2 questions for you. What do you do and how do you do it?
I'm a stockbroker.
Stockbroker. Oh. Still remember that moment. They all looked so damn happy to me.
At that very moment, Chris decides that he too will become a stockbroker. Chris goes home and tells his wife,
I'm gonna stop by a brokerage firm after work.
For what?
I'll see about a job there.
What job?
Stockbroker.
Stockbroker. Not an astronaut?
In truth, Linda has no confidence in him and makes fun of his dream, which hurts Chris deeply.
Do you remember that rent is due next week? We're already 2 months behind. Next week, we'll owe 3 months. I've been pulling double shifts for 4 months now, Chris.
Linda, that is what I am trying to do. This is what I'm trying to do for my family, for you and for Christopher.
Linda finally decides that she no longer wants to live with him, and she leaves the house with Christopher. This makes Chris very angry, and he meets her and says,
Do you want to leave?
Yeah.
You want to leave?
Yes, I want to leave.
Get the hell out of here then, Linda. Christopher's staying with me.
You're the one who dragged us down. Did you hear me?
because he loves his son dearly. Chris also knows that legally he cannot take his son away from his wife. But soon Linda gets a job in Europe, which forces her to leave, and Chris finally gets Christopher back. The house where Chris lives hasn't had rent paid for months, and one day the owner comes and tells him that since the rent is unpaid and he needs to paint the house, Chris must leave. Chris requests for more time, and the owner agrees that if Chris paints the house, he can stay for one more week. Meanwhile, Chris has already applied for a stockbroker job, and the next day is his interview. That night, while painting the house, the police suddenly arrive and arrest him because he hasn't paid his parking fines. Chris pleads with the police to let him go, but they tell him that according to the rules, he cannot be released before 10 a.m. the next morning. The following morning, as soon as Chris is released, he runs straight to his interview. Chris doesn't even have money for the bus. His clothes are stained with paint, and he sits in the lobby waiting for his turn.
Mr. Gardner.
Chris hesitates, feeling embarrassed to stand up in such clothes, but after a moment he gathers courage, stands, and follows her into the room where a panel is seated to conduct the interview. Everyone looks shocked because no one had ever come dressed so poorly for an interview before. Before they could even ask him anything,
I've been sitting out there for the last half hour trying to come up with a story that would explain my being here dressed like this. And I wanted to come up with a story that would demonstrate qualities. I was arrested for failure to pay parking tickets.
Parking tickets? What were you doing before you were arrested?
I was painting my apartment.
they then begin questioning him, asking about his education. Chris replies that he studied up to 12th grade and was first in his class. They ask how many students were in his class, and Chris answers 8. The panel looks at each other, unimpressed, because being first among 8 students isn't remarkable.
But I was also first in my radar class in the Navy, and that was a class of 20.
But still, no one seems convinced, and it appears that Chris has almost failed the interview. Before the panel can dismiss him, Chris speaks up and says,
I'm the type of person, if you ask me a question and I don't know the answer, I'm going to tell you that I don't, but I bet you what, I know how to find the answer, and I will find the answer.
Hearing this, the panel members become slightly impressed with him.
The most senior man in the room then asks Chris, if a man came to me for an interview without a shirt and I still give him the job, why would that be? Chris quickly replies, maybe he had on some really nice pants. Hearing this, everyone bursts into laughter because it is such a brilliant answer. And after that, Chris is selected. On the same panel, there is a man named Jay, whom Chris already knows. Chris tells Jay that he will think about whether he should join the internship or not. Jay is shocked and says, "For so many days you've been chasing me desperately for this job, and now when you've been selected, you're telling me you need to think about it?" Chris replies that he didn't know this was only an internship and explains that his financial situation has completely changed. The truth is, it's a 6-month internship where 20 people have been chosen and only one among them will get the actual job at the end. This leaves Chris confused about whether he should even join it. Jay tells him, "You have time until tomorrow morning. If you don't give me your answer by then, I'll give your spot to someone else." Chris goes home and finally decides that he will join the internship. He starts his training while still selling scanners, gathering enough money to survive with his son for the next 6 months. He also shifts into a smaller house where he now lives with Christopher. One evening when Chris returns home from the office, he receives a letter from the government through the bank. The letter says that since Chris has not paid his taxes, the government has taken away all the money from his bank account. This completely changes Chris's world, leaving him with no good source of income. He even calls the government office, but nothing works. A few more days pass and now he cannot pay the rent for this house either. One night, when he returns with his son, he finds all of their belongings thrown outside. He has no idea where to go. He has his son, his things, and not a single dollar in his pocket. Desperate, he goes to the house of a friend who once borrowed some money from him.
Wait! Wait!
But his friend refuses to open the door because he doesn't want to pay him back. Feeling completely hopeless, Chris stands there with his little son and all his belongings, not knowing what to do. With no home and no money, he takes Christopher to the subway station, wondering where they can go. Christopher asks,
Dad, where are we going?
I don't know.
At that moment, an idea comes to Chris. He turns it into a game for his son, asking him to visualize things with him. Christopher happily plays along, and during the game, Chris gently leads him into the subway bathroom. He locks the door from inside, spreads out some papers on the floor, sits down and takes Christopher into his lap. He knows that tonight they will have to sleep right there in the bathroom. Several times people knock on the door from outside, but Chris does not open it. With tears in his eyes, he feels more helpless than ever before in his life. Chris goes to work. Later, he picks up Christopher and tries to find shelter at a church.
This is my son, Christopher. He's 5 years old. You need some place to stay.
Okay, and I would love to help you, but we don't take men here. It's only women and children.
Chris loves his son too much to leave him, so he goes to another church where he finally gets a place. However, he is told that if he wants to stay there regularly, he must arrive on time every day because only the first few people in line get shelter as the space is limited. This is where Chris's real struggle begins. His office hours are until 7 p.m., but he decides to finish by 5 p.m. so he can get in line early. To save every possible minute, he doesn't even drink water during the day, because if he did, he would waste time going to the restroom, which could stop him from finishing work by 5 p.m. So he keeps working non-stop every day, then picks up his son and goes straight to stand in the church line. Meanwhile, he still has one bone scanner left, which he wants to sell to earn some money. One day, he takes his son out to play basketball. Christopher is playing happily, but inside, Chris is broken. With a heavy heart, he tells his son,
Don't ever let somebody tell you you can't do something. Not even me. All right?
Alright.
You got a dream, you got to protect it. People can't do something themselves. They want to tell you you can't do it. You want something, go get it. Period. Let's go.
Soon after, with the one bone scanner he still has, he takes it to a hospital to meet a doctor.
The doctor is interested in buying the scanner, but when Chris gives the demo, the machine doesn't work. His heart breaks because he has completely run out of money. He returns to the church and checks the scanner, only to find out that one part is broken and he doesn't have the money to replace it. Desperate, Chris goes to a hospital with Christopher, where he sells his own blood to earn some cash. With that money, he buys the missing part, and when he fixes it back into the machine, it starts working again. This fills him with joy, and after selling it, he finally earns some money. That night, instead of going back to the church, he rents a decent room where he and his son can stay. After many days, they finally get to watch TV, and both of them sleep peacefully in that room. Meanwhile, Chris keeps working tirelessly, making calls all day, meeting people in person, and then studying late into the night because he has to prepare for an important exam. This internship requires passing a theory test, and it is crucial to succeed. The challenge is that while the other 19 interns are all highly qualified, Chris is the only one who has studied only up to 12th grade. On the exam day, Chris is well prepared, and he finishes his paper quickly, being the first to leave.
Feel about the graphs.
Easy.
I struggled with the essay question on the back. What did you write?
Essay question.
On the back.
Soon the day arrives when the exam results are going to be announced. On the day of the results, only one man out of all the interns will be chosen for the job. Everyone is called in one by one, and when it is Chris's turn, he sees the same panel of people who had interviewed him months ago. The most senior man looks at him and says,
Nice shirt.
Thank you, sir. I thought I'd wear a shirt today, being the last day and all.
Well, thank you. Thank you. We appreciate that. But, wear one tomorrow, though, okay? Because tomorrow's going to be your first, if you'd like to work here as a broker. Would you like that, Chris?
Yes, sir.
So, welcome.
Hearing this, Chris's eyes fill with tears, because for the past 6 months, he has struggled endlessly, without a home, without enough food, carrying the full responsibility of his little son. His senior then asks,
Was it as easy as it looked?
No, sir. No, sir, it wasn't.
and finally, his life begins to change. At the end of the story, we see Chris walking with his son, and just then, the real Chris Gardner passes by, the very man on whose life this entire movie is based. A few years later, Chris leaves his job and starts his own firm, which he eventually sells for millions of dollars. Today, Chris Gardner is a wealthy man and also a motivational speaker, inspiring people to achieve success in life just like he did.